Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to May's Business and Culture Committee meeting. First agenda point and second agenda point. I'm going to ask the Director to take us through the notice and summons of meeting and members' attendance and apologies. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So members, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of Business and Culture Committee, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber, Guildhall and Derry. So we'll take the roll. Alderman Cook.
Online, Stephen.
Alderman Guy.
Online, Stephen.
Councillor Boyle. Councillor Alex Duffy. Councillor Rory Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Sean Harkin. Councillor Brian Hart.
And Shaw here, Lena, Stephen.
Councillor Conor Heaney.
Sure.
Councillor Ashley Hutton.
Shaw.
Councillor McDade.
Online.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor O'Farrell. And Councillor Neelis. Thank you, members.
Stephen, it's Alderman Cook here. Keith Kerrigan's now a member of committee as well, and I think he's joining us. He's just run a wee bit late.
No problem. Thank you. I'll mark his attendance when he arrives. Thank you.
I am online currently, but I'm online on the phone. But thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Are you muted? Because I can hear Castle Derrick in the background. Item 3 is a broadcasting statement. I would like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council website, derrysaban.com. Item 4 is declarations of members' interests. So if you want to declare them now or at the relevant item. And item 5. Item 5 is our deputation. And today I'd like to welcome David McLaughlin and Paul Mason from the Millennium Forum. And they're going to give us their annual update on progress at that much loved venue in the heart of the city. So lads, probably 15 minutes or so for your presentation. Then we'll open it up to members for questions and comments. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for allowing us to come in today to give you an update on how we've been performing over the last year. We're currently in the first year of a new 5-year corporate plan, and it goes without saying that we feel that we've had a successful year as we now stretch into the 25th anniversary year. Within the corporate plan, we hope that it will serve as a guide to the theatre's development over the next 5 years. We intend to ensure that we have a magnificent theatre for the future generations of the city and beyond to enjoy, running in unison with the ambitious city plans that has been developed. Crucial to our plan are 3 mission threads within the corporate plan. If we could have the next slide, please. So we see the theatre delivering a sustainable theatre programme through careful management of the relationship between cost and income potential. Our programme will reward the audience by delivering a small but affordable number of national touring productions and a range of other entertainments, which the theatre can be proud. 26-27, as you're all aware, is the theatre's 25th anniversary. We will deliver a programme that celebrates that important milestone with some exceptional performances already booked and a few others which we still have to announce. The theatre will continue to be an active supporter of the community by delivering a programme of accessible activities and events that will recognise and aim to tackle disadvantage. It will also continue to support the community interest in the performing arts as a career. Next slide. This slide just gives a few figures for the past year. You can see as we celebrate the 25th anniversary, our visitor numbers for the 25 years have approached 8.5 million, which is an exceptional figure. We have a regional impact of some 32.5 million. So in layman's terms, for every pound of council subvention we get, we generate around about £82, which is a fabulous figure. I hope you will agree. And we have the independent report, which was commissioned to back up those figures if anybody ever needs to have a look at it. We felt it was very important to do it from an independent perspective. And last year's turnover was in excess of 6.1 million. And if you look at that from the point of view, in 2015, turnover was about 3.1 million. 2020, we were up at about 3.3. You can see that we've had a huge jump in income, in particular since COVID. So very successful from that perspective. Next slide, please. This slide gives an indication of where our audience comes from in general terms. You will see later on, we sell around about 160,000 tickets a year. So in comparison to last year and this year, you will see how things have performed. And the biggest mover, obviously, which is very, very good for the tourism market within the city, is the fact that we've increased substantially our audiences from outside the, let's call it the region. So we have Northern Ireland and beyond. Last year, we attracted 19.7% from that region. This year, it's up at 22.7%, so a substantial increase. BT 48 and 47 are still our main areas for attracting customers. Around about 64,000 people have bought tickets from those two postcoded areas. And then we can look at others, which is mainly Donegal. It's the best way to describe it. I mean, there might be a few from a few other places. And we were very surprised, for example, at Christmas, first show of the pantomime at 10:30 on a rainy December morning. We had 3 schools who came up from Leitrim, which is 2.5 hours away, and a couple of schools from Enniskillen. So we were very impressed by that, you know, because it must be at least 2.5 hours from Leitrim to come and see a show. And they've told us they'll definitely be back. So BT 81, 82, which is another area within the council area, Strabane and Castledare, accounts for some 6.27% of our audience, and that's over 10,000 ticket sales. So there's 10,000 people coming from Strabane, Castledare, to see what we've got on in the main auditorium. And then you've got Limavady and you've got Omagh, and again, very, very, very supportive. 6.63% from Limavady and 4.38% from the Omagh area. So all very, very encouraging. The audience seems to be growing and seems to be expanding and seems to be doing what we wanted to do, which is feed into the city economy as well as to the city cultural nightlife. Next slide, please. So the next slide, where we look at what we've been trying to deal with for 1.5 years, which is, and we've been working very astutely on it, is the social prescribing. The Millennium Forum over the last 1.5 years has been vital to the health and well-being of our citizens. Our social prescribing link workers connect people to creative programs that build connection, confidence and community. We've been working closely with the University of Atypical, and we're the first theatre on the island of Ireland to earn accessibility champion status, setting the standard for inclusive arts across the district and island of Ireland. You can see how it works there. We get referrals from GP or health partners who identify people's needs. Could be mental, could be physical. They then redirect to a link worker who matches the person to some of the creative programs that we do within the theatre. Could be our our dance programs that we've got going, or it could be our playwriting programs, could even be, our tea dances, which run on a monthly basis for people with dementia. But we have a number of programs which run, and the positive aspect of all the programs that we run is that we do them for free. So there's no charge for anybody. But they then feed into the Millennium Forum program, and we've seen nothing but positive results which have come out of those programs that we've been running for the last 18 months. As I say, and the upshot of it is we became accessibility champion. So we did in the last few weeks, and there's going to be a ceremony next week, which we hope that people will be able to attend, and maybe we'll get the mayor at it and people like that. If we then move on to the next slide, which will show some of the work that we've been doing, and it's a picture tells 1,000 words. So if you just settle back and have a wee look at this, it'll last about a minute or so, and then we can move on from there. So if you can play that would be great.
Since I was very little, I've always loved acting, singing and dancing and stuff, and I get to come with my friends and perform all these shows and play fun games with everyone. I get to meet new people and stuff. So basically it's really just a place for children to come and express themselves through drama.
I enjoyed it because I got to meet so many new people, and from where I'm from there's not half as many facilities as Interact offers. It's good as well because it offers new opportunities which you could later pursue. It helps you find new hobbies and interests.
The core of it is that it also supports positive mental health, supporting young people who have anxiety or who find it hard making friends, or just maybe they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders.
I think it's a good way just to make more friends and just to enjoy yourself during the summer.
I think everybody has a responsibility to help the community. I mean, we wouldn't be anything without the community that comes to visit the forum and supports us. So it's only right that we give back. And if you have a thriving community, then you have a thriving city and a thriving economy.
You get to interact with people your own age, make forever friends, and it's really fun.
So the social prescribing work and the outreach work that we do works with a variety of people from 5 years old up to 85 and beyond. And it's very much a community-based program. We work with a lot of groups throughout the city and beyond. And we've tried in previous years to go out into the region. So this year we haven't been as successful. We lost a bit of funding that we had from the Arts Council for rural communities and stuff like that there, but we are looking at other ways to see how we can develop it as part of the 25th anniversary. One of the things that we're trying to do as part of the 25th anniversary programme, and it will probably happen on the 3rd of September, is have a large-scale dementia-friendly tea dance in the main auditorium of the theatre, and hopefully have about 200 people coming to that, which feeds into the work that we've been doing year-round with the dementia community. And again, it's going to be one of the highlights of what we're trying to do as part of the 25th anniversary celebrations. If we could move on to the next slide, please.
Since I was very little.
So next slide is basically numbers. So you can see how things have been performing. As I say, theatre tickets or theatre attendances, we sold 159,362 tickets last year. And our annual visitor number into the auditorium was approximately 280,000. We break that down in a number of various ways. For example, we had 1,200 people who attended our annual or our monthly Energy of Light discos. So we have, which are discos which are run by people with disabilities and attended by people with disabilities. Normally happen on a Friday evening in the Studio Theatre. We had approximately 1,800 young people who were involved in some of the youth productions that we had put on. And you have to understand that these youth productions over the last 2 years have been very limited because a lot of that work happens in the July and August period. And we were closed for the previous 2 years over the summer because of the public realm work that was going on. We're now kicking back into that for the 25th anniversary year. And we have a major production happening in July of Evita, which is very prominent at the minute, from a theatre perspective, given the show that ran in the West End for all of last year, and which is now transferring to Broadway. And we have some fabulous young people who are, playing the leads in it. And again, a wide spread of, people coming from Donegal, from the Strabane area and beyond, as well as what we would consider to be more local, from BT 47 and 48. So again, very, very positive. 3,426 people who attended our access events for people with disabilities. And we've increased our access members to 1,268 this year, which is members who sign up to the access scheme and then get free admission to see shows at the theatre with a companion. And you can see 2,100 there who attended dementia-friendly tea dances. And just a point of interest, 72.5% of all tickets sold through the Millennium Forum now are sold via the internet. So we don't deal with people face to face as much as we used to, which is, I would say, some ways disappointing, because you got more feedback from people back in 2015. That figure would probably been at about 35%. Of people booking online, but as I say, the online bookings have now increased to nearly 3/4 of all bookings. Paul will talk now maybe about the conferences and exhibitions.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Chair. I suppose one of the figures that I would draw your attention to is the conference and exhibition numbers. And if we look back at last year, that's a significant downturn in the number of conference attendees. And one of the simple reasons for that would be that the number of conferences and major conferences that are coming to the city certainly seem to have dropped quite significantly. And we work very closely with Visit Derry as our partner for delivering conference. The hotel industry obviously looks after the very small style conferences, the 50s and the 100s, but as a major destination within the city centre, that those 800 and 900 seat conferences that will be coming to us just really aren't coming, and I suppose that's down to a number of issues, certainly not least issues that Visit Derry themselves are facing, and I suppose from our perspective that's a worrying trend, because we're very conscious that the theatre and conference business is a huge economic driver for the city. It welcomes people in on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday to the hotels, as well as actually taking up those spaces in the theatre for meetings. And then obviously has the positive impact where people will come back to the city with their families on leisure tourism as well. So the conference side of things, it's certainly a bit concerning. The last major conference that was in the city of significant numbers, the 200s and 300s, of course, are significant. But those conferences that are the 700 and 800 delegates, where you see the city being taken over and the restaurants and the bars at night being full of people wearing their corporate lanyards, they're definitely in decline. And that's not least because a lot of those conferences aren't coming out of Belfast. And that's definitely having a major impact on ourselves, but mostly it's also having an impact on the city as well. Thank you.
What I'd like to look at now would be examples of some of the capital investment that we've spent over the last year to keep the theatre in the state that we would expect it to be kept in, considering it is one of the jewels in the crown of the cultural investment here. So if we could have a wee look at the next slide, please, or if we could play the next slide. No, sorry. If you can just click on the blue screen. Yeah, that'll give you an idea of the investment we've made in our front of house facilities. And we've spent the best part of £200,000 developing the bathroom facilities at the Forum. As you're aware, 25 years old, so we've modernised them. And more importantly, we've increased the capacity. So we now have double the capacity for bathrooms, which we've noticed a huge benefit for, at intervals in particular. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback from that perspective. But again, it shows you just on bathrooms alone, the cost of, replacing and fixing, £200,000, not an insignificant amount of money on us. But I'm sure many members have been to the theatre and they've seen the bathrooms and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think we're blowing our own trumpet when we say they're finished to a very high, finish. And as I say, it makes the theatre a much more pleasant place to come to. And then from a strategic objective perspective, we've looked at our continued aspiration to improve our community connections and address the problematic lettings on Newmarket streets. Members will be aware that we were gifted the 3 main units between Richmond Centre and Foyleside, but they've been extremely problematic over the last 20 years in particular with regards to getting let out and stuff like that. We've managed to get all the units let out at the minute, but we had the space upstairs above the central unit and above the progressive unit in particular. And so we came up with an idea of opening it up for more community space. And again, if it's possible to play that slide again, you'll see the work that we've done developing a new dance studio, which you can see there, and 2 other rooms which we can use for conferences and meetings. And if you look out the window when we come, you'll see where it is. That's the Primark building, and we're right beside Richmond Centre. So just to give you an idea where it is, as I say, very encouraging. We had considered potentially turning it into accommodation, because that was one of the problems that we were having with artists coming to the city, especially at Christmas and when we were doing our own shows, and we plan to do more of our own shows going forward over the next 2 or 3 years. And accommodation was very, very difficult to get at a reasonable price, but the cost was too prohibitive. So we decided to go down the route of the community and looking at encouraging more community groups to come in and participate in stuff that we're doing within the theatre. Next slide, please. And then just looking at some of our future challenges. I mean, the major challenge that we're looking at from a building perspective over the next year, 18 months, is the fabric of the outside of the building. Areas of our external walls on the east wall have suffered from the effects of water ingress over the last number of years. Water has run between the cladding and has over time rusted the reinforcing bars in the cladding, causing the steel to expand and crack the stone facade. And I'm sure if you walk on the city walls, you'll see that, and you'll see how badly damaged it has become over the last 3-4 years in particular. And I suppose maybe it's down to the fact that we're 25 years old as well, so that nothing lasts forever. So we're looking at potentially fixing that. It's going to be a costly exercise. I mean, we got a figure last year when we were talking to some of the architects and planning consultants, and we discussed it with some of the planning officials within council, and we had approached them with regards, for example, to look at rendering the stonework, but we were advised that probably wouldn't be approved. Because we were in a historic area and within a conservation area. And to be fair, it would have been excellent from a maintenance point of view, but it wouldn't have been very nice to look at, just to have it rendered. So we've got tenders going out now, looking at bringing in new stonework, and we will take it on a phased approach. So we're trying our very best to get it finished this summer, with regards to from the front door of the theatre to the Anthony Gormley statue, which is about halfway down the east wall. And then we will take phase 2, which will be from the Anthony Gormley statue to the bottom of the city wall towards the library. That may not happen until the following summer. Again, all down to cost, because we are cutting our cloth accordingly. We're hoping that it can be delivered for £300,000, but costs have just started to spiral, and we are going at it by replacing not like for like, but like with better. So we're bringing in natural stone, which means that it'll be easier to clean, and we might be able to keep on top of it a wee bit more, because obviously one of the big problems we have around that area is graffiti and stuff like that. You're forever out cleaning. So yeah, and we will make some repairs to the work further on down as well, from a remedial perspective, to make sure that it's safe for people, to be walking along the city walls, nothing falls and hurts them. And if you go to the next slide, just in case you haven't been up around that area in a while, that'll give you an idea of how bad it is. You can see how the stonework's breaking off, and you can see how it's damaged, as I say. And if you're ever up around that area of the town, you ever want to pop in, for a wee look around and for us to talk it through face to face in the theatre itself, we're always there. So just, just come in through the doors. And that's really it. Thanks for listening. And if you've got any questions, we're happy to try and answer them.
Yeah, thank you, David, and thank you, Paul. So before I bring anybody else, and I just want to give you my perspective on the forum. Really, really encouraged by the increase in audience, the increase on the economic impact, the work, the sterling work you've done in improving accessibility to the arts. Really, really encouraging. Like I go to the Millennium Forum a number of times per year. I was there this month. That was my first in-person experience of K-pop. So you've definitely broadened my horizons. I do think it has a real asset to the city. And what I notice every single time is the staff who are so friendly, so approachable, and so accommodating. So there's a really, really great atmosphere in the Millennium Forum, and it shows it as a community. There's a really, really great sort of family spirit. And I personally am proud of that we have such an accessible venue in the heart of our city that people can go and enjoy different things. So, it is a real, real asset. And I just think the atmosphere there, it creates excitement. It makes the place a lot more joyous and a lot more interesting. So we're proud to be associated with the Millennium Forum. And I think these are doing a great job. And I hope you go from strength to strength. So in terms of indicated speakers, currently we have 1, 2. So the first is Councillor Hutton. Aisling.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks to David and Paul for coming on today and giving us a rundown of what's been happening thus far with the Millennium Forum. It's a theatre that I be in often enough, whether it's with my children or with my husband, but I had written down here today that I personally wanted to speak about the staff in particular, about their friendliness, their helpfulness, just overall welcoming attitude whenever you go in, whether you're going in to purchase a ticket or even to use the toilets on some occasion if I have the grandchildren up the time with me. But first and foremost, the staff are absolutely excellent and nothing's a bother to them, and they have always got a smile on their face. They could be having the worst day ever, but you would never ever notice. I wanted to touch on the social prescribing element of it. I've had experience in the past of working on a social prescribing project through the work that I do at Health for Life. It was one of the most rewarding and successful programs that I have ever worked on in my career in working with healthy living centres. Unfortunately, we didn't receive funding to keep that on. But what I will say to you is it's the best prescription that anybody could ever get from their GP. We had worked with people in relation to both mental and physical unwellness. And the fact that you're introducing social prescribing through the arts is a no-brainer at all. I would just love to see, a huge report on this to show us the type of programs that you were doing, the people that you help, the age groups of those people, because social prescribing is the way forward. Through Council, I also sit on the Healthy Cities leadership team, and we have spoke to Mike Nesbitt at that leadership team and told him that this is something that needs to be looked at by the Department of Health about bringing it back into our society as a whole. One thing about the social prescribing stuff, and it's just through experience, and it's not me telling you what to do, but at the end of our programme, after 5 years, we had engaged with a consultant who did a social return of investment report for us, which looked at the amount of money that the social prescribing programme actually saved the NHS, prescriptions, hospital admissions. There's an array of reporting that can be done arising out of this that can show how much money the social prescribing project actually has saved. And it's not only to show that, it's to show that you have made an impact and that giving you further money to do it is actually going to save money in the future. So it's just a wee point that I wanted to make for you as well. The numbers speak for themselves. The visitor numbers have went up, the amount of ticket sales have went up, and although I do get what you were saying about that face-to-face contact and that people-to-people conversation, but the online stuff is handy. People want to be doing stuff online. Suppose people have that guarantee as well with their credit card that if the show cancelled and all of that there. But the dementia-friendly stuff, I've seen that as well. The stuff that you have been doing there with the community groups, particularly Deeds, across the whole community. Very touched on the 1,200 young people, I think it was, that went to the Energy of Light disco. It's amazing. And it's just the impact that has on their families as well, and how helpful that is to their families, and also the community organisations that they would attend. Conferences, I just wrote a wee thing down here. I think the Millennium Forum would be absolutely amazing for a conference. The conferences that I've attended through my career, but I was this year at the Legacy Builders Conference. It was organised by the North West Youth Services. Unbelievable. There was the breakout rooms, there was rooms for the stalls, and then you have the health fair every year by ARC. So it's an absolutely excellent facility for conferences, and promoting that more and more will pull the conferences in, and hopefully from further afield as well. But looking forward to the 25th anniversary celebrations, because you don't do anything by half. Everything will be done immaculately and to the best standard. Well done on the picture. This ticket sold out in what, 6.5 minutes? That was another one. We were like, so all in all, thank you so much for coming in and keeping us updated, because it is important that we are all aware of the successes of the Millennium Forum, but some of the obstacles that you face as well, because as a whole, we all want to be there to be helpful and to ensure that the Millennium Forum continues to succeed as best as it can. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Aisling. Next indicated speaker is Alderman Hussey. Derek.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you'll be able to hear me or not. Suffering at the minute. Thanks for the presentation. Is there any chance that we can have that? I would prefer to have had that before the meeting, to have looked at the figures, etc. I don't know if it went out, but I didn't get it. I didn't get it. Maybe I'm not a member of the meeting. So that's grand. Going to the conferences, and I agree with Councillor Hutton. I would have imagined that the Millennium Forum would have been ideal, and indeed the city, the structure of the city, for that sort of size of conference, and not just the breakout within the conference, but the socialising, etc., that will take place, and the interaction of council attendees. But I noticed that you did reference Visit Derry. Are we been told that Visit Derry are failing in a way in not working harder to achieve conference visits to the city, or is it something else that's operating in there? I do feel that the city lends itself to conferences, and my final point is just a comment to the director and to others. Would it be possible to have a similar report for the Alley Theatre? Now, I realise the difficulties of the Alley this year, but something maybe that can be prepared as we go through the year for this time next year, a similar report in regard to our second theatre within the district, the Alley Theatre. But thank you for the presentation.
David, before you come on, you're under no obligation to answer that question. That's a question about Visit Derry, not Millennium Forum. But you feel free to answer. But Derek, you're pushing it there.
Alderman Hussey, thank you very much for your question. And I actually sit on the board of Visit Derry, so I would certainly not like I don't agree with your suggestion that Visit Derry are failing. I don't agree with that at all. But I think they've certainly faced some challenges, given that the funding that cuts and the pressures that they had received. However, I would suggest that perhaps part of the problem is that the tourism board strategy for business tourism, and it's readily available, has said that Visit Belfast will be the key driver for all conferences coming through Northern Ireland, which will then be farmed out to the rest of the regions. And obviously, as we try to continue to address regional imbalance, it's something that we really all, from all other regions throughout Northern Ireland, need to be stressing that it needs to be divvied out to us all. So it's not that it's Visit Derry's feeling, it's a Northern Ireland issue that is Belfast-centric, and we must challenge that to ensure that those conferences actually come down the road to us. Thank you.
Chair, can I just comment briefly? Thank you for that, and I agree fully with your assessment of that. It's the usual problem we have in the Northwest. They won't distribute fairly throughout Northern Ireland.
And I'm going to bring in the director on your alley theatre proposal.
Yeah, I suppose the short answer is, yeah, we can certainly pull a report together of that ilk. It'll, obviously the alley theatre's closed at the minute, but we can do some historical data, and then from, once we've got a year under our belt of reopening, then we'll have a much better picture for members. But we can certainly pull a similar presentation together in terms of, it'll be distinctly different because the audiences are different, smaller theatre, and a lot of it's very localised and so on, but it would be good for members to see that in a visible way. So happy to do that.
Thank you, Stephen. Next indicated speaker is Councillor Boyle. John.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to David and Paul for coming in actually and giving us this report. And can I apologise to both of you for being slightly late? There's always good reason for being late, but I'm not going to make excuses. Look, it's a very positive report, and I'm the kind of person that always wants to try and accentuate the positive. There are evidently some challenges, and some of the information that you've provided us with here today, and I'll come round to those in a second. But as I said, I think the important thing here is to look at the significance of the improvement in visitor numbers for a start. And every one of those visitors is a person who meets people who experience it and have a good experience in this facility. And I congratulate you and all of your team for continuing to provide the level of customer service that we know you give. I am a fairly regular attendee, I think is the word, at the Millennium Forum. Not as much as I'd like to be, but at the same time, not every show's for me. But I am looking forward to one at the end of this month, Miss Saigon, folks. If you haven't got your tickets, buy them immediately. It's a great show. But probably the most significant thing to see here is the access that you provide for so many people who perhaps would never engage with the arts, never engage with theatre and various other parts of the arts. I mean, that is a very important part of what you do. And your access membership of 1,200 people who, to all intents and purposes, maybe they'd never ever get to a theatre if you didn't do that. So congratulations on doing that, and please do, and I know you will continue to do that as well. Dementia-friendly tea dances, who would have thought? Over 2,000 people attending those, so I mean, I could go number after number after number. I think the online booking thing is basically a thing of now and the here and now, and that's just, I don't think it's particularly reflective of anything other than, wouldn't it be lovely to see people in person and hear more from them, but it's just the way it works. I've had to learn how to book tickets online too, and I used to be a bit of a Luddite when it came to that sort of thing, The challenges are, you've outlined them. I think probably, and this is where it isn't, and this is where we need to be focusing. If there is a situation where stuff is, to quote, being farmed down from Belfast, and we are effectively asking Visit Belfast to consider ourselves, or indeed any other region, then we need to be putting the pressure on to say, well, why are we not getting what we think we deserve? And that's up to us as elected representatives. And I think it's something that we probably need to be putting our heads together on to see how it is and who it is that we should be talking to ensure that actually this city and this district gets its fair share. And that would also include the Alley Theatre, I hasten to add, when it reopens, So that was a new one on me, I must confess. So kind of bounced at me, but I think something for the directors to consider and all of us as elected reps to consider. That it's disappointing, but not only that, it's actually something that worries me. The other thing as well is, you know, the very substantial costs that you're going to incur when you're 25 years old. It probably is an age thing, and in relation to the structure as it currently is, that's a huge cost to the Millennium Forum. Have you explored any ways of how it might be that it wouldn't, the cost wouldn't just be shouldered by the Millennium Forum, or if you're having trouble with that, is there any way we can particularly help as a City and District Council in relation to that as well? I mean, I know there are elected representatives who sit in your board, but you know, at the end of the day, I think it's, you know, what you're providing here is something that's extremely important. That cost is something that perhaps could be put into something else that would be a little bit more useful for people. So I'd be interested to see where it might be that we might be able to address that particular position or situation as you find it. I certainly and my colleagues in the SDLP would be keen to try and assist if we can with addressing that particular matter. But as I said, I am one to accentuate the positive where, and if I can, and there's a lot of positive in your report. So thank you for coming in. Thank you for giving us that level of detail. And of course, like others, wish you well for the future as well. The conference thing is a concern. And obviously your structural challenges are clearly a concern for you as well. But all of that should be a concern for all of us. So certainly we're here to listen, but we're also here to help. That's the whole point of you coming in. So I ended at that, Chair, but thank you very much to both of you again for coming and being so open and honest about it all too.
Thank you, John. So two people have mentioned conferences or lack thereof. If anybody has a proposal, I'm happy to consider it after this deputation is done. Next indicated speaker is Alderman Cook, Chelsea.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. And on behalf of the DUP, I would just like to thank David and Paul for coming along today. It's great to hear that the Millennium Forum is growing year on year. Audiences from Enniskillen and Leitrim definitely is impressive. So hopefully the good word keeps on spreading. I just want to echo what some of the other councillors had said too in regards to the staff. You know, they're always warm, welcoming, professional. So hats off to them. They do an absolutely fantastic job. Like others have said as well, I would be a regular attender to the Millennium Forum. Some of my favourites, flash dance, dirty dancing. But to be fair, the panto probably is one of my favourite to enjoy. It's a tradition that me and my family have been doing, me and my mum and my dad and my sister, since I was a young girl, and I have the opportunity to take my own children, so we wouldn't miss it. So a lot of what I was said has already been said. So congratulations on 25 years, and here's to another successful 25. Thanks again, Chair.
Thank you, Chelsea. So two more indicated speakers. Penultimate is Alderman Guy. Darren.
Thank you, Chair. And just to thank David and Paul for coming in today to present. Sorry I couldn't be there, but just a few questions on the public realm. I know you touched on it there. I don't expect you to give us figures, like, but was the losses substantial at that period? I think it was 2 months you had it closed down for over the summer months. I know that there's, as it's moved about the town there, it has affected different businesses and so on in the period where they've sort of moved back and forward to get the work done, but accommodating those areas the best they could. Obviously just want to mention Stage Beyond as well. The resident group there on the forum. I've been to a few of their plays and absolutely excellent. So they were. They always put on a great show. I was recently at the Broadside one. Excellent. The young lad that played a young John Dunlap before he headed out to America was absolutely brilliant. A real star in the making. again, the conferences, yeah, would mention it. It is a great place for the conference. As Deputy Mayor, I had the pleasure of opening ARC's conference 2 years ago. And a great turnout, as always. I've attended actually a few of ARC's conferences over the years. And just to say, on the actual staff himself, I'll just finish off by saying staff are always excellent, always very welcoming, and they make your theatre experience excellent from the minute you walk through the door to the minute you leave after the show is over. And long may it continue. Thanks for coming on and presenting.
Thank you, Darren. Lads, do you want to respond to the sort of public realm operational or financial impact?
Thank you, Chair. The public realm problem was basically over 2 years. Year one, we managed to adapt with a whole refurb of the auditorium where we put in new seats, new carpet, and reconfigured the auditorium. So we weren't too adversely affected that year. The problem came when we found out very late in the day that they weren't doing the public realm work then that year and moved it to the next year, but didn't let us know until the October-November time, which was far too late for us to be able to do anything from a programming perspective and stuff like that. And the simplest way to approach it was that we just had to cut our cloth accordingly with the fact that we were closed for the 2 months. I mean, and you'll see from our visitor numbers over the last couple of years, they've gone down slightly because we basically had nobody through the doors in July and August. Our normal numbers would be somewhere in the region of 320,000 people a year through the doors. Not necessarily all paying, obviously. There's 160,000 ticket sales last year. But we dealt with it as best we could. We adapted and we used the time to do other stuff. The Interact Art Festival, which we ran every year, we took it out last year in particular throughout the whole community, and there was very little, if anything, done in the Millennium Forum. So we were everywhere from Shantala to Castlederg and from Top of the Hill to Craigan with it. To say we didn't get the funding for it this year, so we've had to limit it a wee bit more, and we're doing it all in-house this year because we can. But as I say, adaptability was the best approach that we can say with regards to what we did. With regards to the conference business, I think we have to be a wee bit more proactive with regards to how Belfast in particular treats the city. And I'm on about the powers that be from the departments, and we have to stop accepting crumbs from the table, because basically that's the approach that I see they're adopting from a tourism Northern Ireland perspective with regards to, well, sure, it'll come to Belfast first, and then basically whatever is left over, we'll maybe put it out throughout the rest of Northern Ireland, and that's not I don't believe that's an acceptable approach. But it happens in so many different walks of life. I mean, we've had the arguments over the years about the funding that is coming to the city from an arts perspective and stuff like that, and the unfairness of that. And I was involved in a big report back in, it must have been 96, 97. I think it was Mary Nealis developed it and took it to the Assembly, which was showing that the funding back then was about 90% to Belfast and 10% to the rest of Northern Ireland. I don't think it's changed that much. So we've all got to stand together and we've all got to fight together to try and bring more funding in general to the city and the region. Thank you.
I think it's about 82% Belfast at the minute, and everybody else shares the remaining 18. So final indicated speaker is Councillor Harkin and then Councillor Donnelly. Sean.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dave and Paul, for coming in today. Really appreciate your time, and thank you and all the staff at the Millennium Forum for the positive contribution that you give to the city, because there are a great variety of excellent events there that create great memories. Over the last year, I think I've been to several really different types of events there, and really enjoyed the occasion. And as other people said, I mean, it's the staff there are brilliant. And Yeah, and I think that, you know, the work that you are doing to diversify what you offer is noted, and I think that that's very important, that the Millennium Forum as much as possible is as inclusive as possible, and I think you are making strides towards that. And I know we're in also a very, very challenging environment, and I think over the last, probably since the pandemic, every year there's been some discussion about the financial challenges that you're facing because, you know, I'm sure the cost of electricity isn't getting cheaper in the building. I mean, we're in the middle of you know, an energy crisis, for a cost crisis for the vast majority of people, and that hits organisations like yourself as well. So, and for me, I want to see stability for the workers there in terms of like people not being worried that their jobs are on the line. And we are in a very, very challenging environment for all arts organisations. I mean, we've had the closure of Echo, you know, not so long ago. Before that, it was the Waterside Theatre. And I think that we as a council have to be very strong advocates for our arts sector as much as we can. And so I think that you know, I think we're all taking note of the challenges that you've talked about in terms of needed maintenance that's going to have to be done to the building, because there's no way around that. And I suppose I think that this is your opportunity, while we are hearing from you and can kind of ask you questions about what you're doing. I think that this is the opportunity as well for you to say, this is what we need council to do on our behalf, to protect you know, to protect what we offer. So it is very significant for me what you've said there about the funding, because look, we in my whole time in council, this has been a key discussion about addressing regional disparity. And if you feel, even after all the commitments from Stormont over the last year, that nothing has changed, that is very, very, very significant. It's probably one of the most significant things that's been said today in the chamber, to be quite honest. And if that's your ground level view of it, we have to do something about that. I mean, that is what we're mandated to do. And I do think, you know, we've had a very frustrating time with that. So I think that you know, we are going to have to look at that. And if it doesn't feel like anything's changing, I think we have to fully take that on board as the council, because as you know, we have a lot of engagement with art organisations, where there is a united voice on the need for more funding for Derry in the Northwest, and that there's been a real legacy of decades, if not longer, of underfunding. So, you know, even with more funding, arts organisations, theatres are going to face challenges, because that's just the environment. You have to try and figure out a way of getting people in the doors, and there's many organisations maybe doing similar things, and you have to figure out how not to duplicate. And Millennium Forum is a very big building with a lot of seats to fill. So I'm sure there's huge day-to-day pressures. So, you know, we want to continue to see the Millennium Forum to thrive, and we want to see an arts sector thriving right across Derry in the Northwest. So thanks for coming in today.
And definitely the final indicated speaker is Councillor Donnelly. Gary.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not a member of the committee, and apologies for being late. I'm probably not as cultured as some other speakers, and I don't attend all these, but I do be at the pantomime. I have a granddaughter who was in it, that has been in it the last few years. But as been, and you know, it's been pointed out here, the pressures and the environment that we're living in, and that the Millennium Forum is operating in. But you know, what I like about the Millennium Forum is the highly disability friendly aspect of it, and I think that's very, very important. And you know, you can see it, and you've heard about it, and at the first theatre in Ireland to achieve Macathon friendly status, and we just passed a motion the last council meeting or recently about that. And it isn't, I think, you know, it's important that as many people as possible get a chance, you know, to see performances and take part in the arts and that. And I think that regards to disabilities, you're well up there, and it has to be commended. And the last time you were in, you know, I spoke that you know, there's a lot of areas in Derry that have deprivation and you know, some may not be able to afford going there, and that no doubt has got worse given the current climate. The last time you mentioned a number of schemes and incentives, are they still happening or have they been added to? Because I think that is important, that everybody gets an opportunity to enjoy, you know, the services that are being on display in there. Thank you.
So David, if you want to respond to Gary and possibly summarise. Yeah.
From a youth and access perspective, our projects have sort of stayed at the same levels because the funding hasn't been there to improve and increase them. And we take a very we've made a very proactive decision that anything that we do from that perspective is done free of charge. So any youth program that we run at the minute is free because we don't want to create barriers for anybody to become involved in it. I mean, I set up the Millennium Forum Youth Drama Project 20 years ago, and I set it up as a free project so that anybody who wanted to come in and be trained in theatre could be trained in it. And it didn't matter whether you were Protestant Catholic or your parents were earning a fortune or they didn't have a penny to their name. And I've kept it like that, and I've been put under pressure in the last 3 or 4 years to maybe look at starting to charge. And I've said that we will not be charging as long as I'm in charge of the Millennium Forum from that perspective. I mean, and the project has been used as a yardstick for other projects. I mean, the Opera House in Belfast came down and looked at what we were doing 15 years ago and developed their youth project. And they charge upwards of £250 for a 2-week training course. And the guy that was in charge of the Opera House at the time moved on to Southampton, to one of the busiest theatres in the UK, and developed the project there. So our project has flowered out and is now involving theatres across the UK from the model that we created. The only difference is that we won't charge. You know, the tea dances that we do, the work that we do with the, you know, with the older people, you know, from a drama point of view. I think we charge for the energy of like disco itself. I think we charge about £2 for people to come to that, but that's to pay for the DJs and stuff like that, who are all disabled themselves. So it's a community from that perspective. But besides that, as I say, you know, things are difficult. You know, we all accept that we're working in, you know, in difficult times from a financial point of view. I mean, we've done an awful lot of work over the last 3 years in particular. And we found the first year after COVID very, very difficult. But there is stability, as far as I can see, within the Millennium Forum from a staffing perspective. We have a very good staff who work there. We run a lot of training programs with them, and not just necessarily training programs from a theatre perspective. You know, I mean, we're looking at, for example, the EVAG pledge. And we've got a group of people who are working on that, looking at violence against women and girls, and, you know, letting the staff understand how we can deal with that. We've got, what do you call the project that's coming up?
Yeah, so we've just completed, we've now over 24 of our staff are now first aid trained, and we work in partnership with St John's Ambulance. We do a lot of access training for the staff in partnership for RNID and RNIB. So there's a myriad of training programs that we're constantly running for all the staff. And just if I can respond maybe about your very kind comments about the team at the Millennium Forum, they are a fantastic team. We have a team that range from 16 years young right through to almost 80 years young as our most senior member. And some of our staff have been there since the building was being built. So it's a testament to them. And I have to thank you as the person that sort of runs the operations side of it with the team. I want to thank you for your very kind comments about the staff, because it has been particularly helpful. And I will certainly feed that back to them all, because they are all a very, very good team. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a wrap. We really appreciate you coming, David and Paul. We really appreciate what you do on a daily basis for the city and district. You know, you are a unique part of our cultural offering and may go from strength to strength. And, you know, please do say to the staff, because, you know, feedback is important. And I think every single member who spoke commented on how amazing your staff are. So thank you. Until next year. Yep.
And just for members' information, we plan to have a ball on the 4th of September as the 25th anniversary centrepiece. And we will send invitations out to all members. And again, it would be nice to see you coming to it so that the staff can understand, you know, as well, that you're supportive of what we've been doing. But as I say, it's just there to put it loosely in your diary for now. And we can take it further then if we have to. Thank you.
So, folks, a number of you had mentioned the issue with conferences. Does anybody have an actual proposal? Councillor Boyle.
Yeah, well, look, Chair, I haven't written it down because, quite frankly, as I said, some of that was news to me and perhaps the others as well. But I would suggest that we would want to consider writing to the Minister for the Economy, because it's that department who oversee tourism in the north here, and they obviously have an overview of this. I would like to try to understand, and I don't understand how it is that this situation may well have arisen. And I think it's important for us to understand that first and foremost. And so if we could write to the Department for the Economy through the Minister to see what comes back, I think we should be seeking a meeting to understand what the situation is and how this happens to be suggested that there is some kind of a regional imbalance. So the straightforward proposition is we write to the Minister to, if we can, secure a meeting with the Minister, but certainly to meet with the Minister's officials in the first instance.
You have a seconder, Councillor Boyle? Councillor McDade. So I'm going to bring the Director in.
I mean, certainly happy to write a letter. I mean, the situation's been highlighted several times, both through the Board of Visitary and I do think previously through the committee, that the Tourism Northern Ireland contract Visit Belfast to look after conferencing. So there obviously is an issue there, and as a Visitary and others have highlighted that, but happy to write a letter and start the process of trying to have a conversation to why that is the case.
Alderman Hussey, Derek.
Obviously, I'm not a member of committee, so I can't second, but fully support the suggestion of getting the information back. When we got the information back, I would suggest that we may actually go to the point of seeking a meeting with the Minister on the information that's returned. Thank you, Chair.
Is everyone okay with that approach? No dissent? All right, thank you. So item 6 is chairperson's business. I've had one person get in touch, and that's Councillor Harkin. But before I bring the foil side councillor in, I think everybody realises that this is the last business and culture meeting of this particular term. This is the last time you're going to have to endure me waffling on. So I just want to say to the officer team, to the committee team, to the IT support team, thank you for everything you've done over the past year. So that's members past and present. I know we've had some departures in recent weeks. I want to say thank you to everybody in the chamber. You've been generally well behaved, and I thoroughly enjoyed this term in the chair, and special thanks to Councillor O'Farrell for being my deputy chair, who I'm sure was willing and able to support, but I've gone to every meeting, so I'm sorry. So thank you, folks. So Councillor Hunton.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for bringing it up. And I suppose this is the last meeting before the next term. And it's just to say a huge thank you to you, Rory, for chairing the meetings very effectively and fairly. You have great knowledge around this directorate, and I always be eager to hear what you have to say, particularly when you're crunching numbers. So thank you very, very much. We'll be grateful to have you back on the floor, but you did an excellent job, and a huge thank you to all the officers and the staff who provide us with the reports month in and month out, and they are also very informative, and we appreciate all the work that goes on behind the scenes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Aisling. Alderman Guy, Doran.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Ashley and Councillor Hutton says there, just to thank you for chairing all the meetings really well, as I would totally expect from you, Stato, as she mentioned as well. I know that it is a keen, you are obviously involved with the museums and things like that there for the past number of years, so you're very keen in the cultural side of it as well. So just to thank you and the officers again for another year on business and culture, for keeping us updated with everything, and long may it continue. So thanks, Chair.
Cheers, Doran. Councillor McDade, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I suppose just to come on the back of everyone else, thanks very much for being a very good chair this year. You have been very fair, and you've kept the meetings moving along in a professional way. And I would agree, you definitely know your stuff in this committee. And I think I'm on it 2 years now, but I would still go to you about a lot of the things. So I just want to thank you for that. I agree, stats is definitely your strength. And I'm sure we'll hear more of it still whenever you're on the floor again. Don't know what you're talking about waffling on. I mean, we'll still hear that when you're on the floor as well. You're going to do it from the chair and from the floor. And also thank you to Councillor O'Farrell for being your deputy, and thank you to the team. You are very, very busy and you do a great job. So thanks again.
Thank you, Catherine. Alderman Cook, Chelsea.
Thanks, Chair. And I'm going to apologise. I have a fussy 1-year-old running around here, just in case you see her crying. I just want to echo the comments of the previous councillors. You've been a great chair, and want to thank you and the team and your deputy as well for doing a great job. So we'll look forward to having you back in the chamber beside us.
Thank you, Chelsea. And final indicator speaker is Councillor Horgan. Sean.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to congratulate you on your chairpersonship of the committee this year. I think you've been excellent, and I think you've been very fair. And as others have said, you often frame the discussion very well for us and have done some of the homework as well around the stats, and that's always appreciated. So well done. And as you said, thank you to all the committee staff and officers as well for the last year. Thank you.
Cheers, Sean. So I'm going to bring Sean Horgan on again. So you have a brief item for Chair's business.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. And I wanted to bring the March for Lough Neagh to members' attention, and that's going to be happening this Sunday at Battery Bar, which is on the Lough Shore. It's on the Lough Shore, and it's organised by the Save Lough Neagh campaign. And as people will have seen from images, the algae has returned, unfortunately, to the lough again this year. And there is a strong feeling from people who live in the vicinity of Lough Neagh and people who live in Belfast that get their drinking water from Lough Neagh that not enough is being done to basically reverse the pollution that has, that we've seen over the last couple of years. So the lough, from the perspective of a lot of people, is still dying, and not enough is being done to turn this situation around. Hence the call for the march, and it's expected that it's going to be a very big march this Sunday. It starts at 12:30. I forgot to mention that. And if you this is an issue that is not a localised issue to Lough Neagh, because it's connected to the pollution of our waterways in general, and it's expected that most of the waterways, the rivers and the lakes in the north, which are viewed as being in crisis at the minute, are not going to meet a basic European standard for 2027. And that is very, very worrying, because this is our water that we depend on for to drink. It's also it's a habitat. It's a very important ecosystem that we exist and survive in. So our waterways from Lough Neagh to River Foyle are being poisoned. So I think that Lough Neagh is very much, because of its size and scale, emblematic of the crisis that's happening to our waterways right across the north. People will have seen as well that there was a recent report came out about the impact of sand dredging on Lough Neagh, and it's demonstrated that it has been extremely damaging to the ecosystem there. So I would encourage people to come if they can, or let people know about it. I think the council has passed motions in the past in solidarity with the campaign calling for Stormont to act to clean up the lough, but also to address water pollution right across the north. Trade unions are supporting this. This is not just an environmental issue. I think that this is an issue that impacts really everybody, and there's a real urgency to doing something about it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sean. So that, I was going to say, noted. It's probably not the right committee. It should have been Environment and Regeneration, but you don't sit in that, so I exercise a degree of caution. Right. So Alderman Hussey, Derek.
Chair, I had a similar item, but I'll leave it till tomorrow.
Good boy. So we have one more person who'd like to discuss. So it's Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the last minute. Let me in last minute, and I know my colleague Grace had brought this up at Governance and Strategic Planning in relation to the Jazz Festival, but I just thought it was very apt to mention at this committee because a lot of the work behind the Jazz Festival is done by Jacqueline and the team. So I just wanted to say a massive well done and a huge thank you. I hope I'm speaking on behalf of everybody here, but it was again another huge success. The town was buzzing. People had smiley faces for the whole weekend. But I just wanted to mention it here today and put it on record how grateful we all are for the work that goes on in the year before, because I'm sure you have started planning for next year already. And it was a huge success. So thank you very much.
I really dropped the ball there. I should have said something about the Jazz Festival. So here, I echo those sentiments. Team was amazing. Got out a few times. Really, really enjoyed it. Great atmosphere around the town. So amazing. So item 7 is matters arising from our last meeting. Has anybody anything they wish to raise? Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. BC 64, the Local Economic Partnership. I had asked about a list of partnership board members. That was to be followed up if it would be in line with GDPR regulations. Has that been followed up? And if so, can a list be made available to all council members? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I can provide a list, but I haven't followed up on the GDPR, but I will do. All right, I'll come back to these.
Okay, Derek. So next indicated speaker, Councillor Harkin. Sean.
Thank you, Chair. It's 6626, employability and skills for 26-27. And look, we passed a very strong motion at council about the cuts that were coming into the community and voluntary sector on April 1st for frontline organisations that help people overcome barriers to work. And a lot of that was involved, skills. And we did include in that motion a request that the minister tell us what the impact would be in terms of the, helping people with a disability. And that would apply right across the north. But I'm just wondering, would officers have a view on our work around employability and skills and how those cuts are going to impact in Derry and across the council district? Because unfortunately those cuts did go through, and I've seen a number of organisations post up already about losing staff, which likely means there's going to be a reduction in frontline services. So it's just if officers have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, clearly this is in relation to local growth funding, I think you're talking about, is it, in terms of the 64% cut? For sure, that's obviously a UK government administered scheme, something that both from a council perspective and from Education and Skills Delivery Partnership, there's been strong sort of opposition to that process and the fact that those groups will be adversely impacted. We as a skills team have been working with some of the groups here located within the city and district, trying to see, first of all, in terms of the frontline provision. So obviously there's people behind who are benefiting from accessing those support programs. Those are front and centre. So what we're trying to do is we've developed a partnership approach with some of the community and voluntary sector training providers to see whether there's funding that the LMP is delivering or council are delivering, that we can sort of work with those guys to be able to see if the participants can still benefit. But then actually, obviously, people who are working in that sector have been impacted. So I think that clearly a cut in funding is not welcome. One of the issues around local growth funding was a successor to the UK Share Prosperity Fund. That was a successor to the ERDF, EU structural funds, and which was never really, fully replaced. And I think that that's the big issue. And I think we as a committee, back whenever we were looking at the impacts of EU exit, we did highlight this is going to be a challenge down the road. And I think that that's come true. And I think we had put forward proposals in terms of A, what the impact was going to be, but B, what the solutions could be. So they still remain. But I think that the collective approach through the Education and Skills Delivery Partnership, also as a council, can try and minimise some of the worst impacts, really. Councillor Hargan.
Are you okay with that, Sean? Yep. No more indicated speakers on any items from the last meeting. Okay. So welcome to everybody in the gallery. We're just going to get onto the items for discussion and decision today. So item 8 is the Halloween 2026 report. And we've got Jacqueline to take us through that item. Jacqueline?
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to advise members that Council has received a formal correspondence from the North West Carnival Initiative confirming that the organisation cannot deliver on the requirements for the current service level agreement and is therefore providing notice to Council. So the report provides an overview of the proposed alternative approach for Derry Halloween's 40th anniversary programme in 2026 as an interim measure, just to highlight. This proposed approach will be delivered within member-approved budgets and will direct investment into local artists, cultural organisations and community participation and event production across the council area. So the correspondence, just to say, members highlighted several ongoing challenges impacting the organisation's ability to plan and deliver future programmes. The initiative identified the withdrawal of intellectual property consent by several artists who had previously undertaken work as creating a significant issue in relation to the use of props, costumes, dressing for parade delivery. So this matter had arose just in advance of the Spring Carnival and remains unresolved. So the Carnival Initiative had noted the scale and complexity of the forthcoming Halloween programme and considered it necessary to provide Council with sufficient notice to enable alternative arrangements to be made. So the Carnival Initiative cessation of the SLA will result in the organisation being unable to sustain its operations, and the board therefore taken the decision to proceed with steps to place the organisation into administration on a managed and orderly basis. So officers will continue to work with the Carnival Initiative Board to identify what assets it will have that can possibly be used for the Halloween celebrations and the appropriate permissions in place, and every effort will be made to ensure that those assets are not lost and are used for Carnival Initiative purposes. So in terms of the alternative approach or the proposal in this, the proposed solution, as I say, in the interim, is to move to a partnership-led approach for the 2026 delivery that spreads delivery activity across multiple partners supported by a clear creative leadership and structured community participation element. So it is proposed that we appoint a parade artistic director through an open and transparent competitive process, and that role will cover elements like overall creative direction, creative concept and key visual approach to the 2026 programme, produce clear creative briefs and coordinate contributions for delivery partners and participating groups, and then oversee the creative production process. Ensure new commissions works has clear permissions and agreed rights for use in terms of delivery and promotion with appropriate contracts in place. This delivery approach will focus on supporting local cultural capacity through commissioning and engagement of local delivery partners to develop and present the parade and spectacle content, and a structured community participation programme, as well as targeted production enhancements such as including large-scale props and appropriate audiovisual provision to support the quality and audience experience. So this approach is intended to provide paid work and commissioning opportunities for local artists, makers, technicians and suppliers, as well as strengthening the wider cultural sector by retaining activity and spend locally. So members, you'll note that the equality screening profile has been screened out, and there is various indications there in terms of addressing climate and data protection. So financially, members, this approach can be delivered within the member-approved additional budget for the 40th anniversary. And the detail in terms of budgets allocated to each element are highlighted in the report. But the total budget required would be about £89,000. The profile is intended to maximise the benefit of the local cultural sector by directing funding into the local creative leadership, local partner delivery capacity and structured participation activity and local production spend. So the appointment of a parade artistic director will progress through an open and competitive process, and clear intellectual property arrangements will be included within the relevant commissions. And officers are also in contact with the landlord at Rathmore units, where currently North West Carnival Initiative reside, and to look at a temporary continuation of the lease, just to get us through the next number of months. So recommendations are for members to note the Council has received the formal correspondence from the North West Carnival Initiative advising of the organisations cannot deliver on the current service level agreement and giving notice accordingly. And then for members to approve the proposed approach for the delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for that update. Currently, I have one indicated speaker. It's Councillor O'Neillis. Grace.
Rory, and Gormaga Jacqueline for taking us through all that. Just at the minute, I just have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. So, you know, when I was at the meeting with yourselves, that I was very, very keen that everything was kept locally, something that I'm always pushing through community wealth building and social value as well. So to see the local repeated constantly through that paper, I was really, really happy to see that, Jacqueline. From the point of view of the partner organisations, can we ensure that if a partner organisation does win part of the contract, that all work is completed locally as well? Or is there a potential that a partner organisation could win part of the contract and then outsource it to an organisation that isn't local to the council area? So again, just going back, always going back to the community wealth building for me. The other thing is about the creative director through this open process. What do they need to have to apply for that? And is there a potential that we could hold a series of workshops before the tender process is completed, so that it just gives everybody that fair chance to really be on an even foot in terms of, you know, individual artists who might not have that same sort of commercial background of filling out tender documents, so that everybody is supported the same way to make sure that all of this does go to local artists. And the other thing then is Rathmore. You're talking about seeing if you can keep it on. What would be the purpose of it? Would it be so that the creatives can use it to make the props for Halloween, or would it be for yourselves for storage? I just want to say, in terms of the Carnival initiative, that it is really sad that we have come to this point. And we understand the complexities behind it, and we just want the best for the city and district in terms of Carnival and in terms of Halloween. So we just want to get this right, and we really appreciate the work that's been going on in the background to get us to this point. So just those wee things first, Jacqueline, before I go into any proposals.
Sure. So in terms of the partnership approach and ensuring that it remains local, where we can, we will do that. We could write it into the brief, and we could say that, you know, to try and retain workshops and local artists and costume making locally. So that we could attempt to do that. I don't know how much we can legally hold in terms of that from a procurement process, but we can certainly write it in and encourage whoever. I mean, the idea is that whoever this parade producer is, that obviously we're hoping that's local, and we're hoping that they contain I suppose, the product locally. In terms of their experience, they will have to be someone that is used to setting a creative vision and working with various organisations to deliver product. So they'll have to show us the experience in that front. And it's a good idea about the workshop. Maybe we can consider that in terms of when we go to engage, we can write that into the process. In terms of Rathmore, the purpose really is initially to hold the stock and the storage. There's a lot of items up there. Carnival Initiative are currently doing an audit on what's there. But depending on how this works out, it may be used for prop making and the ability for artists to use that. But we're looking at it at the moment. I think the initial ask really is we need somewhere to keep items. So that's why we're looking to extend it at this moment in time. Is that all right?
Grace, would you like to come on again? No. Okay, so next indicated speaker is Councillor Harkin. Sean, still looking for a proposer, by the way.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in, and thank you, Jacqueline, for taking us through the proposal. And first of all, I want to say it is disappointing that the Northwest Carnival Initiative is no longer able to carry out the SLA and deliver the contract with council, and that is very disappointing. And I do want to thank the Northwest Carnival Initiative, because over many years they produced fantastic events that this council benefited from immensely, and a lot of organisations across this district as well benefited immensely from. And I want to thank everybody that was involved in the Northwest Carnival Initiative. The people that worked on the props, the community organisations that came in and participated, and everybody that made those brilliant events happen. And that's something that we do not want to lose. We want to continue to build on that. But it's unfortunate that the issues with the Northwest Carnival Initiative and with the people in it and around it and doing the work have not been able to be resolved. And that's unfortunate, and that's where we are. And I think it's been true that what the Northwest Carnival Initiative did year in and year out for us, particularly around the Halloween festival, is that they produced these amazing events on a shoestring budget in a lot of ways, because we know that the arts, just like we talked in the last discussion with the Millennium Forum, a lot of arts organisations are underfunded, and that creates a very precarious situation for artists. And that's something I think that we as a council are trying to change with the participation of trade unions, but also creating new standards that will lead to better terms and conditions for artists and give artists more of a voice. And I think that that's important, because I think that that's something that we want for the whole arts sector and all the people in it that dedicate a lot of time and sacrifice and love what they do, but also have to pay their bills. So that's that's what we have to aspire to as a council. I do think that I think that there's a number of objectives for us in terms of what's in the paper. I think that the issue of ensuring that our funding stays local with local artists and local organisations is an absolute imperative, because we talk about how brilliant our artists are in Derry and across the Northwest and in our district. So it shouldn't be the case. You know, the vast majority of that funding should be staying here. And that fits with the goals of the council as well about supporting you know, local artists and local organisations. So I think that we should be ensuring that. There's an issue in here, I think it's in point 1.1, where it says some of the issues are unresolved. And I think as a council, our goal has to be to try and resolve the issues in order to make sure that that the artist community across the board are able to participate in the Halloween this year, but not just Halloween and the other projects as well. But it's the 40th anniversary of the Halloween parade, and we want it to be very successful. We want it to build on the legacy that has been established. We want it to be great for people who come here, and we want it to be a brilliant event for the people of Derry and beyond who created the Halloween festival as we know it. So that's also absolutely essential. And that's really, I suppose, you know, what I'm looking for in the proposal. If it is addressing that, I think that it's a good proposal. And obviously we've had some pre-discussions before we come here today where we've had an opportunity to lay out as councillors what we would like to see. It seems to me that they are written into the proposals. But, you know, I want to ensure that the concerns that artists might have that we speak to, that they're being addressed through the document here and through the proposal. So if you can clarify any of those issues that I've tried to raise and that Councillor McNeill has raised as well, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Jacqueline?
I suppose that the first item that we'll do is bring in a creative producer to, that will help us identify potential partners out there in terms of parade delivery and spectacle. It's not just about the parade. This is about the Awakening the Walled City Trail as well, and how those pieces can be used. But they'll do that. They do it possibly through workshops, as Councillor Neelis has highlighted. And you know, what we as council want to do is I suppose lead them in ensuring that that is a local offer where it can possibly be. We can't guarantee, but we will absolutely try and ensure that that does happen. Because, you know, we've proven, as you said, that locally our parade has been delivered successfully over the last number of years. So I suppose we will remind the producer of that and ensure that like we have a tight rein on what happens as well. So that's really, yeah.
No, thank you. Well, see, I know that that's going to be the intent of the council, right? To try and ensure that the funding stays local to the best of our ability. But I'm also, I suppose, wondering, because we've had discussions and we've passed motions about community wealth building. And community wealth building, the goal has been to try and, so that does create, I don't know what, if there's prejudice or a bias in the way that we would look at funding opportunities. How will that play through the tendering process and the overall funding in terms of what we do? So it's we don't want accidents to happen when we can actually utilise motions that we've passed through the council, where, I mean, for example, when we implement our ethical procurement policy, that will mean that there will be a basis for us to make decisions. So it seems to me that that would apply when it comes to tendering opportunities for when it comes to this funding for the entirety of the art, the Halloween events. So I'm just curious about how can we factor that in, or is there legal obstacles to doing that?
I suppose how we can factor it in, because the value, once this tender is broken up, the value of each item would be less than what we have to do in terms of publicly advertising widely. So what we can do is ensure that the people invited to tender are local organisations. But yeah, in terms of ensuring then that they only use local people, that is probably something that would be outside of our remit. But if we only invite local organisations to tender because it's within the proper procurement process, then that's what we could do.
Okay, so have we had a proposer yet? No? No. Councillor McDade?
Thank you, Chair, and I'm not going to propose it yet either, sorry. I just want a couple of questions. Thank you, Jacqueline, because this has obviously been a lot of work, and we know that with the 40th anniversary, with Halloween being the kind of big flagship festival first, and then being the 40th anniversary, it's a big year. So firstly, I suppose I need to thank the Northwest Carnival Initiative and everyone who's been involved, right from the artists to people who like make the props, who do the lighting, every talented person who I'm in awe of, who puts that together. I mean, thank you very much to everyone who has done it over the years. And it's only got bigger and better every year. When Councillor Nina said it, I'd written down here, it's great to hear the word local a few times there. That's literally what I wrote as you were speaking, because I think that is, and that's what Sean has said too. That's the most important thing here, is that part of the joy of going up the town at Halloween is seeing the wee ones in primary 1 now being primary 5 and a bigger role in the Hollywell Trust, or, you know, in different parts of the walls. It's that kind of local input that has always kind of really made it. So I'd be really keen, and I suppose when Sean was talking there, that council position that we have around community wealth building hopefully would give us cover to make sure that it would be local organisations that would be appointed. And then I suppose it's up to us then to kind of keep engaged with the organisations to ensure that it is kept local as well, because as you say, it's outside of the remit once it's appointed. I did have a couple of questions about the creative director kind of appointment process. And if I'm picking you up right, Grace, is it about doing workshops before the tender goes out so it gets people all the skills they need so they can apply? So those like leadership skills and everything else that maybe people might not have experience of. How long will that take? They then go out to tender, and then given that we're in May now, and we know that this is a year long, kind of as soon as Halloween's over, it's nearly planning for the next year. Like, this goes to full council, it's ratified, and then how long will that process take, and how realistic is it? And then about Rathmore as well, is there a plan to kind of get it emptied, essentially, storage moved out, so that the artists and prop builders and everyone else can use that space then? Because if we're going to appoint a new creative director, they're going to need space. They're going to need space to bring their artists together and to kind of creatively get the creative output that they need. So I would just have a couple of questions on that. But I think that the focus needs to be on keeping it local. We have loads of talent. I mean, I don't think we need to go further than local. We have loads of talent here, and actually I think you'll be inundated with applications, so it's just about it'll be a hard job to narrow them down. But if I could just get a couple of bit of clarity on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Jacqueline?
Yeah, just very quickly, in terms of, I suppose we're mindful that the Northwest Carnival Initiative has not ceased operation just yet. I think their plan is possibly July. They are trying to sort out the issues around the intellectual property, so that wherever those assets go to, that there's no issue when it comes to whether that's council or whether that's other organisations, that there's no issue around intellectual property. So that we technically wouldn't move in to take over Rathmore until Carnival Initiative ceases. So that's going to be at least July before that happens. But I suppose we'll know a bit more then what that will look like and how much space is there. And currently they're doing, as I say, an audit on what's available. And we can, and to answer the first part of the question, we could look at workshops, but the reality is that'll have to happen now in the next few weeks before we have a timeline. that we're operating towards for delivery of the Halloween parades and spectacles. And just to highlight to members, I suppose there's different levels of the Halloween delivery. There is the kind of large scale animation level delivery as well, which would have went out to public ad months and months ago. And there's a select list of organisations on that, and that is currently, they're almost appointed. So that would have been, the levels of funding there would have been over the threshold that needed publicly to be advertised. What's in this paper is to do with the parade and some street spectacles that we would use for Awakening the Walled City Trail as well.
Alderman Hussey, Derek.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jacqueline. I suppose it's a bit of a blow that this occurs when council are trying to organise the 40th anniversary issues. And I noticed that, and I suppose it would be fair to say to the Northwest Carnival Initiative, thank you for the early notice, because, you know, we're talking about October, it gives time. But at the same time, were there any attempts to relook at the service level agreement? Because there is precedent within council to look at service level agreements with community organisations that are providing. So was that looked at? And I say that, and members know my concerns about the costs of Halloween in the city vis-a-vis other Halloween issues, and indeed Christmas and all the rest of it. The issue of intellectual property, I presume sort of copyright sort of things we're looking at there. And I note in 3.8 that new commission work, etc., will it be included within that issue of intellectual property will not be something that will occur going forward out of the issues that arise. And when I talked in terms of the renegotiation of the service level agreement, because of that breaking down through no fault apparently of Northwest Carnival Initiative, there's a £14,000 bill now to appoint a parade artistic director. That's for one event. Northwest Carnival Initiative have been involved in more than one event over the years. So does that mean that going forward, Christmas, the same scenario is going to have to be looked at going forward? Thank you, Chair.
I'll deal with the last one first. Carnival Initiative, the two main parades through the service level agreement were St. Patrick's Day and Halloween. Christmas wasn't part of the agreement there at all. So we are, as we said, this is an interim proposal to try and get us over the line with Halloween, but we know that this needs further thought in terms of the wider strategy around Carnival Arts delivery. So in terms of we've looked at every option, really, the service level agreement and the continuation of that. And the reality is the Carnival Initiative have a board, and that was the decision by the board to cease operations. So there really all options were looked at, and there wasn't, and there is potentially other organisations out there now that could deliver as well. So we are mindful of that. But members, this is a temporary solution to get us over the line, and we will see what happens for St. Patrick's Day.
That's helpful, Chair. Thank you.
And final indicated speaker, Councillor Donnelly. You all right?
Good, Chair. And maybe I could be reading the room wrong, but I detect a bit of nervousness here. You've twice asked, have we got a proposer? And unlike other items, people are usually straight in. And that's not a bad thing, because the Halloween festivities are a success story. That you can't. That's a no doubt, and it's that. And local has been mentioned here numerous times, and we like that. That narrative is put out constantly of how Halloween came about, and given the times that we were in, the conflict and that. So there is this, you know, I think everybody wants to see it succeeding, but I do detect a bit of nervousness. We're talking about time. I know Alderman Hussey says we plenty of time. I maybe don't share that sentiment, you know, because I think the amount of work that goes into it, the amount of, and again, you know, the work that the people who made all them props and made all this happen, and control officers, amazing, a massive amount of work. But I do, you know, the one thing is that, you know, is the local aspect and the grassroots aspect, and that has to be maintained here, because there is other initiatives. There is some criticism from the UK City of Culture about people from outside, from our regions, our countries, and the lack of, you know, there was a bit of disgruntlement about people not being able to get a, you know, a fair bite at the cherry. And I know this is an interim, but there's also concerns amongst some people about going down a corporate road, which I think would be, you know, would destroy it, you know, sponsored by some big firm. I think that I don't see any plans for that, but there is people who are saying that, you know, there's an inevitability it'll go that way. I think that would be a catastrophe. Alderman Hussey points out 3.8 and, you know, 4.7. There is an elephant in the room, and it's the intellectual property. And, you know, 4.7 says clear intellectual property arrangements will be included with relevant commissioners and contracts to support delivery certainty for 2026. Now, does that, I don't know exactly what that means. Is that talking about the props that already exist, or is that talking about new props? And I think that council needs to handle the props. And, you know, was there no clear intellectual property arrangements pre this one? I know it's subject of a dispute, and you may be limited on what you can say, but I just find 4.7 a bit of ambiguity. And not saying that's deliberate, it's just that I have a problem sort of interpreting that. But again, I think we're all pulling in the same direction here, that we want to see Halloween succeed. We're proud of where it came from. It's important that we get it right, and that it doesn't impact on the quality, the size, and probably as importantly, the income that has generated over many, many years for the economy of the city. Thank you.
Just very quickly, I suppose the intellectual property referenced in terms of the new commissions would be just to make sure that they are solid and that we do have rights to utilise the props or whatever costumes that we would commission for future events. So that's in terms of new commission, and in terms of what we do moving forward, that just needs to be tighter. In terms of the previous, that would be something the Northwest Carnival Initiative will and are trying to sort out before they completely dissolve.
Folks, I think nearly everybody's spoken. I'm just going to give my tuppence worth on it, and then I'm going to open it up. Hopefully we get a proposal from somebody. I know we've got a lot of people in the gallery who were involved with the Northwest Carnival Initiative. I know you were involved in making the costumes, making the props, making those events a real success. And I want to thank you personally for what you've done. It's really unfortunate what has happened at the Northwest Carnival Initiative. It's unfortunate for the board members. It's unfortunate for the partners, but it's really unfortunate for this council, because we could rely on the Carnival Initiative to deliver amazing spectacles at Halloween, at St. Patrick's Day, Maritime Festival, and that outreach work that was done right across the community was invaluable. And, you know, I'm really disappointed that it's come to this, but the reality is we are where we are, and we need to move forward. And, you know, Halloween, it's not that far away. It's the 40th anniversary. We want to we want this to be as big as possible. We want to really, really celebrate this. So we have to make a decision on this now. We need to start planning now. It is, this could lead to difficulties. I hope it doesn't. I hope we get support from the chamber, but we need to move forward. And my view and the view of our party would be we need to keep this as local as possible. This is a local festival that started off 40 years ago that nobody could have envisaged, how big this is. This is global. Derry is the home of Halloween. It's the capital of Halloween, and that's something that we should really, really celebrate. But we don't want to see. There needs to be a local feel to this. It needs to be local people that manage this, that contribute to this, that perform on it. The local aspect is what makes it so special. It's about why I want to go up to town with my daughter on Halloween night and see local people perform along the quay. Yeah, of course we want to see visitors from all over the world, but this is a local celebration. But we need to reach a decision. And there's so much talent in the gallery that needs to be retained, it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be passed on to future generations. So that's something that we should really, really celebrate. So we're in an unfortunate position, but let's hope that this turns out as really, really positive. We've got a chance to reimagine this, and let's hope it improves. So I'm going to open it up to the floor again. The last indicated speaker saw Catherine McDade, Grace Nealis, and then Sean Harkin. So, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. And I suppose I would echo what has already been said around the chamber, including that nervousness that Gary has spoken about. I think that we know that this is such a big deal and it's such a big festival, and we're scared about it. But I think that the reality is that we have to do something, and you've kind of articulated that there now, is that we are in a position, we know it's coming up, we know the work that comes into it, so we need to do something. So I'm going to propose the paper. You'll be glad to hear, Rory. And I do think that this conversation we've had today around keeping it local, around the scrutiny, around using whatever is within our own control as a council to make sure that it remains local, both from a council perspective and as a councillor perspective, about holding our kind of local people to account as well, making sure it stays local. I think that's our job as councillors as well. So happy to propose the paper and keep a close eye on how it goes, and making sure that those workshops are available before it goes out so that people have every chance they can to apply. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Nealis.
And just in response to the nervousness, it's definitely, Derry's the home of Halloween. So it's really, really important that if we are doing it, that it's being done right, but on the basis that it is only an interim solution. And on what you said, Jacqueline, about if they are broken down into those values, that there isn't the need to go out to a larger tender, and that will help ensure the acts are kept local, and the social value element that exists in the tenders anyway. I am happy to second it. I think that the workshops need to happen, that everybody needs to be empowered to engage with those, and that I think it's just about keeping the communication open with the local artists and with especially the independent and smaller artists who maybe don't go to all the forums that we would hold here within the council, because there are so many out there, some of which are in the gallery, and I've worked very, very closely with myself, and they are there to be celebrated, and we need to make sure that if Derry is the home of Halloween, that the artists that look after the parade are also from the local area. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. And final indicated speaker is Councillor Harkin. Sean.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to third the paper, but I do that on the basis that there is ambiguity in the paper, because it says certain issues remain unresolved, and I think that what we are trying to say to council officers is that we are encouraging council to try and bring positive resolution to all these issues. And I suppose one of the questions is, if you can outline some of the ways in which we are going to go about resolving some of the issues that will make sure that artists feel supported and that artists will be participating in making the 40th anniversary of the Halloween here in Derry a massive success. And I just wanted to say in response to Alderman Hussey, and I'm glad you kind of said it because it allows all of us to have these discussions. I mean, for me, it seems Halloween is far away because it's on the other side of the summer and then it's a wee bit further. But when you speak to artists, they're like, no, we should have been working on this months ago because that's the level of work that goes into making this a huge success. And I think that that is why there's an urgency coming from officers and artists to say this has to be worked out right now, which is why I'm willing to back this paper, even knowing that all the I's aren't dotted and all the T's aren't crossed, because we need to get it moving forward. And I think that that in part speaks about the production of art, because I think that there can be a bit of kind of ambiguity about it, because you see art as something that is creative, but not necessarily as a 9-to-5 job. And a lot of the artists that make things happen, that our council benefits from and businesses benefit from, the artists that are working at 4 o'clock in the morning and not necessarily getting paid brilliantly for it and are trying to get their paycheck sorted out, are not necessarily seen. So I think that this is about, I mean, this is part of that discussion as well about we as a council are trying to be an advocate for our art and culture community. And I think that the way that we address this can help to move that forward as well. And I appreciate that this is an interim solution and we're going to have to develop this as we go forward.
Thank you, Sean. And so there's no dissent. Everybody is content to support. Here, I've got one final question. I know the issue of IP has been touched on numerous occasions. I know there's a reference in the paper to future arrangements to make sure they're watertight in terms of IP, but there's still the thorny issue of props, costumes, etc., that are held in Rathmore, where the IP has been removed. There's no consent for it. So my question is, what happens to that stuff? And there is a view that there hasn't probably been attempts to resolve this IP issue with people sitting in the chamber. And I'm just going to be honest. So we want a resolution. We want a resolution that suits every single party. So I know that we are not the Northwest Carnival Initiative. I know that we have or had a service level agreement with them, but could the director give us some feedback or some steer on what's likely to happen here? Thank you.
Chair, I can't obviously speak for the Northwest Carnival Initiative. We're very aware of the issue as a council, and we cannot at any stage countenance using anything where there's any dispute on. The issue, as Jacqueline outlined, is that the Carnival Initiative will do an audit of what's in the store and then will attempt to resolve those issues over the coming months, which has to happen. We will encourage them and we'll work with them to do that. There is no willingness on our part to do anything either that is against the wishes of the people who created the props, etc. But equally, we need to retain those for the benefit of the city going forward, but only where there is clear agreement. So that will continue, as Jacqueline says, certainly be July before the store issues and all of that is resolved. What I would suggest is, I want to thank members for the debate today. I think it's given us as officers a clear steer as to where we need to take this. As Councillor Donnelly outlined in terms of nervousness, we equally are nervous because we're officers and the ones that will be actually delivering on the ground on the days and on the weeks and months coming up to the parade and the Halloween celebrations and the Waking of the Wall City and all of that. So we do need to crack on. We are up against time, but we do think we have a time to do that. We will seek to engage with as many people as possible over the coming months because equally, we're also local. We live here. We have a vested interest in delivering this on behalf of council, on behalf of our ratepayers, and on behalf of all the people who are involved. So to have that work and challenge now is great, but nervousness equates to all of us, to how we do it. We're very aware that we are responsible for delivering what will be a fabulous event. So what I would also suggest is maybe to elected members, normally we would bring in update papers maybe every 2 or 3 months. Maybe, Halloween, we might bring one back in September or October time before the parade. We might bring an early, much earlier updates, so as elected members are involved, and we'll keep involved with the working group as well in terms of discussions in between, just to make sure as we work our way through over the next while that issues like the store and the intellectual property members are fully informed as we work our way through, rather than just an update in sort of the back end of the summer and before the celebration. So if members are content with that, I'd say certainly from our perspective, we have a clear steer as to how we need to manage the tenders for the next wee while, and how we need to deliver the 40th anniversary for the benefit of everybody.
Thank you, Stephen. So that's item 8. Agreed. It's now 6 o'clock. I need a comfort break. Therefore, you have a 10-minute comfort break. See you back at 6:10.